At just 19 years old, Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford and claimed she could revolutionize healthcare. Her startup, Theranos, promised to test for hundreds of diseases with just a single drop of blood. Investors lined up. Media hailed her as the next Steve Jobs. Her net worth skyrocketed to $4.5 billion. There was just one problem. It was all a lie. Theranos wasn't just a failed startup. It was one of the most elaborate frauds in Silicon Valley history. And behind it all was a soft-spoken, black turtleneck-wearing woman who convinced some of the most powerful people in the world to believe her, without ever showing them the science. This is the rise and fall of Theranos, and how Elizabeth Holmes fooled everyone, until she couldn't anymore. In the early 2000s, Silicon Valley was the Wild West of innovation. If you had a bold idea, a polished pitch, and a hoodie, you could raise millions. Disruption was the buzzword. Fake it till you make it was practically a business strategy. In that environment, Elizabeth Holmes thrived. She wasn't just selling a product, she was selling a vision. A world where no one feared needles. Where testing for cancer, cholesterol, or the flu was as easy as pricking your finger. It sounded too good to be true. And as it turns out, it was. But for over a decade, no one asked the right questions. Investors didn't. Journalists didn't. Regulators didn't. Because everyone wanted to believe. Until one Wall Street Journal reporter did. And when he tugged on the first loose thread, the entire empire unraveled. So let's go back to the beginning and unpack how one of the biggest deceptions in tech history was built. One drop of blood at a time. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe to Veritas Diary and turn on notifications if you want more deep dives into the future of money, tech, and the digital world. And if you're a creator, or want to be, this channel is your blueprint. Elizabeth Holmes was a brilliant, ambitious student. She entered Stanford University in 2002 to study chemical engineering. But just 1 year in, she dropped out. Why? Because she believed she had a billion-dollar idea. In her own words, "I don't want to make an incremental change. I want to build something that makes a difference." She pitched her professor, Phyllis Gardner, on a wearable patch that could both diagnose and treat diseases in real time. Gardner rejected it, saying it wasn't scientifically feasible. But Elizabeth didn't stop. Instead, she found another professor, Channing Robertson, who not only believed in her but became Theranos' first board member. In 2003, she officially launched Theranos. The name was a mashup of therapy and diagnosis. And the vision? Create a small portable device that could run hundreds of diagnostic tests using just a few drops of blood. It would be called the Edison. Elizabeth wasn't just a founder, she was a brand. She wore black turtlenecks like Steve Jobs. She deepened her voice in interviews. She quoted obscure Greek philosophers. And most importantly, she knew how to tell a story. She framed Theranos not as a tech startup, but as a revolution in healthcare. She talked about her uncle who died of cancer and how earlier detection could have saved him. That emotional hook worked. Between 2004 and 2014, Theranos raised over $700 million in funding. But here's the twist. Most of the money didn't come from traditional venture capitalists. Instead, Holmes attracted powerful individuals outside of tech. People like Rupert Murdoch. It became one of the most star-studded boards in Silicon Valley history. But oddly, not a single member had a background in medicine or diagnostics. Internally, Theranos was a fortress. Employees were siloed. Most didn't know what other teams were working on. Non-disclosure agreements were mandatory. Surveillance was intense. In demo meetings with investors or potential partners, they used sleight of hand. They'd show the Edison machine processing blood, but behind the scenes, the tests were being run on commercial devices made by other companies. When Walgreens signed a deal to roll out Theranos testing in stores, they never got to validate the technology. They were shown flashy demos, given reassurances, and they bought in. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Holmes was on the cover of Forbes, Time, Fortune. She was the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. But there was one major problem. The product didn't work. Inside Theranos, some employees started raising concerns. Tests were inaccurate. Data was being manipulated. Patients could be misdiagnosed. He tried raising concerns internally. He was ignored. Eventually, he became a whistleblower and leaked information to a Wall Street Journal reporter named John Carreyrou. Carreyrou was skeptical of Theranos' claims. He started digging. He reached out to employees, cross-checked patents, and slowly pieced together a picture that didn't add up. In 2015, the bombshell article dropped. The headline? Hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology. Elizabeth Holmes denied everything. She called the article false, misleading, and filled with inaccuracies. But the floodgates had opened. Regulators began investigating. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services found major deficiencies in Theranos' lab practices. The FDA got involved. Walgreens and Safeway pulled out of their deals. In 2016, Theranos voided 2 years' worth of blood test results. Holmes was banned from owning or operating a lab for 2 years. By 2018, the SEC had charged Holmes and Balwani with massive fraud. They had exaggerated or falsified test results, overstated revenue projections, and misled investors about the capabilities of the technology. Holmes was ultimately found guilty on 4 counts of fraud in January 2022. She was sentenced to over 11 years in prison. Theranos, once a $9 billion unicorn, was dissolved. All that remained was a cautionary tale. The story of Theranos is much more than a tale of startup failure. It's a mirror held up to the culture of Silicon Valley. And, honestly, to all of us who believe in innovation, progress, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just build a company. She built a myth. A myth that one drop of blood could reveal nearly everything about your health. That decades of medical protocols could be disrupted overnight. That being young, ambitious, and convincing was enough to change the world, even without evidence. People were misdiagnosed. Some were told they had cancer when they didn't. Others were given false reassurance when something was actually wrong. Lives were impacted. Trust in emerging medical tech was shaken. Elizabeth Holmes will serve her time, but the system that enabled her, the one that values vision over verification, still exists. So the next time a founder promises a miracle, let's pause. Ask the hard questions. Demand the data. Because stories can inspire us, but science is what saves us. If this video sparked something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow creator or curious mind. Here on Veritas Diary, we dive deep into the stories, strategies, and systems behind the new digital economy. Got thoughts or your own creator journey?